What's going on, Peacemakers, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are discussing and breaking down Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 4, titled Need I Say Door, which has its moments in this episode, but as I'll explain later, I'm starting to have some major concerns for the rest of this season. We've got some things to discuss, so let's waste no more time, let's break it all down, full spoilers ahead. We kick things off with a flashback 35 years ago deep into the woods. We see a younger Agee Smith with Keith and Chris and they're out hunting. Now what they spot isn't your typical deer as Agee shoots something as it's trying to hide. Now as they approach this thing, it's not an animal, it's an alien creature screaming in agony and its insides are hanging out. Now as we watch this alien creature seamlessly begging for mercy, we see Keith yelling at his dad not to kill it. But we know Agee doesn't listen to those boys as he doesn't hesitate as he finishes it off and then he slaps Keith for telling him not to kill it. Now in the distance they notice a doorway is open. It's the gateway into the quantum unfolding storage area. As we see Chris picks up a mysterious object that the alien was carrying, an object we'll see later on this episode. Now this opening scene served two purposes. One, it continues to show the dramatic upbringing of Chris, but it also serves as a quick origin story of how Agee came into possession of the quantum unfolding storage area. Now James Gunn has hammered home that Peacemaker is key to the future of the DCU, and he explicitly said that it ties into the recently announced Men of Tomorrow. Now, we've already seen Lex Luthor with his own portal and Superman, so these interdimensional gateways are clearly going to be very important for the future of the DCU. But going back to the scene, I have a couple questions. One, where did this alien come from? Is this alien some type of Martian? Does it have any greater ties to the DC universe? And why is it on Earth? Now, we know this chamber isn't just a storage area, it's a doorway to something bigger, potentially dangerous, and definitely connected to the overarching multiversal potential interdimensional narrative that James Gunn seems to be building. Now flash forward back to present day as we see John Economos is still in the back of the van with Rip Jagger and Bardo as they're en route to Peacemaker's house. Now we watch as John and Rip are catching up, engaging in that quintessential hilarious awkward James Gunn banter that we all tend to love when it works.
Remember that time you smashed my car with a truck? Snuck up behind me and hit me in the head with a tire iron?
Yeah, why?
Curious.
But we see John is trying to be discreet as he's sending a text message to Chris and trying to warn him that they're coming. Now the message that John sends Chris is a masterpiece of gibberish. It is utter nonsense with more grammatical errors than a kindergarten spelling test. But I'll give John some slack because obviously he's in the back of a van, he's trying to not be seen, he's under all this pressure, so he didn't have the time to do any spell checking. Now, meanwhile, back at Chris's, he's trying to decipher John's cryptic message, and he struggles at first, but he eventually puts two and two together and realizes that he needs to get the hell out of Dodge. Now, before leaving, we see him taking that mysterious object that he picked up from the alien from the opening flashback scene. As Chris and Agee bolt out the back just as Argus agents make their way in. But Chris isn't quite fast enough as we see Rip Jagger eventually catches up to him and we get our round 3 between Rip Jagger and Chris aka Peacemaker. Now I wish the fight was a little bit longer, but it was a good little scrap. It was brutal at points, good back and forth between the two characters, but we see Chris gets the upper hand, winning this round and making the head-to-head matchup the score of 2-1 in favor of our Peacemaker. But the drama isn't over yet as Red Street Wild, a man whom obsession with Agee is reaching spiritual levels in this episode, he spots our eagle in the sky and is about to take the shot. But who swoops in? It is our MVP of this episode, John Economos, as he shoves him, knocking him out cold, saving Agee. Meanwhile, we catch up with Adebayo in this episode, who's excited because some important mail came in, and that is what she thinks to be important mail, and that is the Pro Soldier magazine. As she's about to text her wife the news, she gets a text from Chris saying that he needs her ASAP. Now, speaking to Adebayo, as I've said in previous episode breakdowns, she's one of my favorite characters of the show, But 4 episodes in, I don't know if the show knows what to do with her. Like, Danielle Brooks is an Oscar-nominated actress. She was one of the standouts in season 1. I like the friendship that we see between her and Peacemaker, especially what we see in this episode. But I don't know if the show knows what to do with her, with the whole wife situation. Her security this plot hasn't gone anywhere. I just hope that by the end of the season, they give her more to do and they pick up the story, because right now, like I said, she's just there. Like, her and Adrian have nothing to do this season so far besides providing some jokes every now and then, and again, being good friends. But I want more from these characters that I really enjoy, and she's one of them. Now, back with John. After Wild wakes up, we see John making up this story, claiming that an eagle came out of nowhere and knocked him out. But John's storytelling inadvertently recharges Wild's already wild theories. Red is now convinced that Eagly is not just an eagle, but he's a primal eagle. He's the ultimate eagle, the one that rules all the eagles. As he claims his third eye is now open, and this has officially become the most important mission of his life. Now, Adebayo picks up Chris, and we finally get some important understanding of how these portals actually work. Chris reveals that he's moved the portal twice before as a kid. Now, the mention of his helmets being created are still a mystery, but he fills Adebayo in on this whole dimensional dilemma that he's caught himself in.
It's not the same, okay? This isn't my mind playing tricks on me, all right? It's one of the 99 doorways to other dimensions in there. And it leads to a parallel world that's almost exactly like ours, but it's better.
Now, while Chris and Adebayo are at his grandfather's house trying to reopen the portal, we see John is doing his best to stall with the A.R.G.U.S agents. Well, mission accomplished by John, because we see he buys them just enough time for Chris to get the portal to relocate to them. Meanwhile, Rick Flag Sr. gets the news that the portal is gone, as he makes a call to no other than Harcourt. And speaking of Harcourt, we see her back at another bar doing what she does best, and that's getting into a fight. Seriously, Harcourt, big fan of hers, but she needs another hobby. Now, back at her place, we see Rick Flag Sr. is waiting outside her door. And immediately we can see that there's already some established history between the two characters. Harcourt knows the way he likes his coffee, and we see him calling her kid. It's clear that they go way back. Obviously, we found that out from the previous episode that Rick Flag Jr. and her had a relationship, so it's safe to assume that Rick Flag Sr. knew about this. Now, for all of you, including myself, Creature Commando fans out there, we get not one but 2 references to that show. Harcourt mentions Rick Flag Sr. being injured, which is a direct nod to him almost dying in a fight against Clayface as seen in Creature Commandos. We also see Rick Flag Sr. casually drop the name Pokelistan, which was the location in which we saw the events take place in Creature Commandos. Now, Rick takes notice of a picture of her with the 11th Street kids and brings up what she told him at his son's funeral.
At the end of the day, Smith killed your son because Waller ordered him to.
Yet me and Pocolistan, you and Ricky and Corder Maltese, we all defied Waller's orders when she went too far.
Now, we can see in this scene that Rick Flag Sr. maybe picked up a couple tips from Waller during his time with them working together. As we see in this scene, he's basically manipulating Harcourt. As we see him confirming that Waller did indeed black book her, preventing her from being hired by any other agency for the rest of her life. As we watch Harcourt expresses how unfair it is how Waller singled her out after what happened last season, and she has no job in sight and her livelihood is suffering and is being affected by this. But again, the manipulation comes into play as Rick is here to change it all for her.
I'm thinking there may be a way for you to get back into good graces of the U.S. government.
Anything.
You have to bring us Peacemaker.
Now, back with Chris and Adebayo, he confirms that the Pro Soldier magazine ad was a total scam. He goes on to tell her that he accidentally killed his alternate dimension self as Adebayo, the ever voice of reason, tries to talk some sense back into him. She points out how problematic his obsession with his other dimension is and how delusional he is to think that the answers to his problems lie there and how everyone in that universe thinks he's someone else. But Chris is convinced he got the short end of the stick. He believes he and his alternate self were supposed to switch places and he was meant to live in that other dimension. As I've said many times, it's a classic case of grass being greener if the grass was on a whole nother dimension. Now, Adrian arrives as Chris, still needing answers and a plan, texts Harcourt to meet up. Now, it's looking likely that when Chris enters the dimension again, that Adebayo will probably be tagging along, if only to prove herself that it actually is real. Now, if that happens, the online theories of the other dimension being actually Earth X will probably be confirmed. Now, for those who aren't familiar, Earth X is a pretty dark place where Germany won World War II and the Nazis became the ruling power of the world. So yeah, if Adebayo joins him there, it won't be a welcome party, and Chris might finally realize that this wasn't the best dimension ever that he's been dreaming of. Now, as this episode comes to an end, it sets up a tense situation. It appears Harcourt has decided to rejoin A.R.G.U.S. She gives Rick Flag Sr. the location that Chris gave her to meet up.
You're not taking the Peacemaker down alone.
We'll have everyone there. Doing the right thing, Amelia.
I know I am.
As Chris wants to ask her one last question before making his decision on whether he's going to go back to the other dimension permanently. And finally, in a moment of pure unadulterated Peacemaker absurdity, we cut back to Wild. He's performing a ridiculous ritual, chanting and summoning some unexpected powers, all in his deranged quest to track down Agee. Now, what kind of powers he has, we don't know the bounds of it, but it seems to be pretty dangerous. Meanwhile, at the meeting where Chris sent Harcourt, we see her sitting there being conflicted, as Rick Flag Sr. and the other agents are getting in position, ready to snatch Peacemaker the moment he arrives. As the trap is sprung, the loyalties are divided, and the other dimension is calling. Now, some things I liked about this episode, as I mentioned, the opening scene giving us a little bit of the origins of how Agee came across the quantum unfolding storage area. Now, of course, there are thousands of questions surrounding that, like the Peacemaker helmets being created, where did the alien come from? But again, I like that they're slowly unraveling the capabilities and the origins and where we're going with the quantum unfolding storage. Now, as I mentioned, I thought John Economos was the MVP of this episode. Like, I thought he had some of the funnier moments. I like that he was being a true friend, unlike Harcourt at this point. And I like that while he's still working with A.R.G.U.S, he still has his loyalties with Chris, and he has not allowing A.R.G.U.S to take full control. So I thought that John was just great in this episode. Now, while it was brief, I did enjoy the action scene that we got between Chris and Rip and them having their third round. That was fun to see, and their rivalry continuing. And also, this episode setting up our first meeting between Rick Flag Sr. and Peacemaker. Which, speaking of Rick Flag Sr., the whole situation between him and Harcourt, their complicated relationship, their past with his son, and it's setting the stage for some serious drama. But to speak to some of my issues with this episode and just some of my thoughts so far this season, the writing hasn't been as sharp, hasn't been as clever, hasn't been as entertaining as season 1 to me. Now, if you guys have seen my previous breakdowns, I thought episode 3 was the best episode of the season, and that still stands to be true even after this 4th episode. But looking at the premiere episode, looking at episode 2, and looking at this 4th episode, again, the season it seems to just be missing something. Right now, the general focus on the other dimension and everything going on with Chris is very intriguing, but it has this one-trick pony appeal to it. And as I mentioned in my breakdown, I feel like us just focusing on this other dimension and the quantum unfolding chamber is just not as compelling as what we got with the butterflies, and how one of my biggest issues so far this season is we don't have our crew together. They're all kind of doing their own thing, but in doing so, there's not a lot for them to do. And as I said, I feel like Adrian got the short end of the stick. Like, of course, I know that James Gunn just likes the character, and of course, I love Adrian. He's funny, but he just doesn't have that much to do besides like pop it in. He's almost like a sitcom character that just pops in for a joke an episode. And then, like I mentioned, Adebayo, I'm a big fan of this character. There's so much to explore with the character. The idea of her being Amanda Waller's daughter and what comes with that and the pressures that comes with that. And it just hasn't really explored much this season. Her and her wife's story hasn't done anything for me. This security business just doesn't do much for me. And I like that she's a good friend. Her and Chris's relationship have really developed since they first met. But I just feel like, again, her and Adrian are just kind of just there for the sake of being there and haven't done that much this season, at least 4 episodes in. Now, we'll speak to the positives so far this season, and that is the whole dilemma with Chris, which dimension is better for him, and the emotional things that connect to him and his brother, and obviously Harcourt and his dad. And speaking of Harcourt, I like what they're doing with her. I just wish that, again, that Adrian and, John has his moments as well, but Adebayo, I just wish they were together. I think that's the biggest thing. The separation of the crew makes the season feel a little bit uneven, at least in the first 4 episodes. Now, before we wrap up, I need to know what you all thought of this episode. I also want to know what you all think of the 4 episodes so far. And do you feel like me that season 2 just hasn't really lived up to the highs of season 1, at least so far? But also let me know what you all think of the theory online about the Earth 2 really being Earth X. Do you see Red now with his seeming to be like a metahuman in his abilities? Should we be concerned for Eagly's life? Will Harcourt really turn on Chris next week? I guess we'll find out. But again, let me know your thoughts on this episode and your predictions and theories in the comments below. Now, if you all have made it to this point in the conversation, I really appreciate y'all. Do me a favor, put in the comments right now, #CallMeRick. Now, if you all appreciate this week's breakdown, do me a favor. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on podcast, please consider hitting that like button. Also, consider sharing this to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about this show. And consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and following me on my podcast feed. All right, again, thank you all for the support. Don't forget, you all are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next breakdown.